Someone once told me, if you need something done, ask the busiest person you know, they'll get it done. But when I think about it on a human level, it's probably just that I feel like I'm just incredibly approachable. And I'm a pretty positive human being. There's very, very few times where I'll go down a negative rabbit hole. And I think people are just drawn to that.
Before we begin, a note for listeners. This episode includes discussion of suicide as well as grief, burnout, and health challenges. Please take care when listening and choose what feels right for you. If this conversation raises anything for you, support links are included in the episode notes. What happens when the version of success you've worked so hard to achieve no longer feels sustainable? In this episode of More Than a Score, we sit down with Melissa Lozanovski, educator, leader, former founding principal, mum, and someone whose story is a powerful reminder that success can evolve. Melissa's journey is anything but simple, from comparing herself to high-achieving siblings, to stepping into teaching young, to become the founding principal of a brand new school. On the outside, it looked like success, but behind the scenes, leadership pressure, burnout, grief, and a significant health scare forced her to rethink everything. We explore what it means to be chosen before you feel ready, the adults who shape our confidence, the hidden weight of leadership that can occur, and why success can come at the cost of well-being. If you're a parent supporting a young person, an educator carrying a lot, or someone trying to redefine what success looks like in your own life, this conversation is thoughtful, honest, and deeply hopeful. Welcome to this episode of More Than a Score.
We're classic teachers / educators, so we're very, very agile and roll.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've done it.
Yeah.
Let's get in.
Get on.
Let's go.
Sorry.
Come on down.
Loz is giving me the look. Melissa Lozanovski, you are joining us today on More Than a Score. We're very excited to have you as both educators and school leaders. We've been really, really excited to have you on. I've got the privilege to do a bit of an intro, which I've whipped up. I've been doing some reading and checking. So I've got a people-first leader who understands it's all about relationships, highly accomplished Laura, highly accomplished teacher and school leader who never wanted to be a principal and then became a founding principal of a high school, a career reinventor who's faced real burnout but then used it to create a brand new path, focused on helping others manage change and build their confidence, all while prioritising well-being, a mum of two, an education school leadership dynamo. Lovely to have you on More Than a Score.
Welcome.
What a lovely intro.
Now, Melissa, when you think of your time finishing up at school, when you look back at that at the end of your time at school, the question we start with is, were you happy with your score?
That is a very good question, and one I'm actually really happy to answer, because it might shock you to know that I was probably what, as a leader and an educator myself, would say was not a good student. So I loved going to school and I was always a good kid and I didn't get into trouble, but didn't love the applying myself part of school. So I coasted through secondary school, especially those senior years doing what I had to kind of do. But I had two older sisters who were academic dynamite. One of them was the dux of her year level. And I faced the real challenge of comparing myself. Nobody compared me. My parents never did, but it was that pressure I placed on myself. So I was like, if I kind of approach my senior years with a little bit of care, but not too much, if I do horrifically, at least I can say, oh, well, I didn't really try that hard. And that was all because of this unnecessary pressure, really, that I put on myself. So I graduated with an ATAR. Am I allowed to share my ATAR?
Of course. Do you?
Yeah.
I love it. I love that you're
72.
checking with us.
ATAR of 72, which was enough to get me into my first preference, which was teaching. You needed 64 at the time. I got like a 43 out of 50 in Italian. I studied Italian. So I looked for the things to celebrate, but the number wasn't this huge number. If I could go back and do it again, I probably would have actually applied myself a little bit more. But was I unhappy with it? No, it got me my first preference. But now my wiser older self wishes they could say to their younger self, why did you do that? Why did you put that pressure on yourself? Because wiser me now knows it's all going to be okay, right?
And you knew that you wanted to go into teaching. So were you aware of what the previous year's score to get into teaching was, if you were quite clear?
I knew the previous year, I think it was 68. So I knew I had to get more than 68. So I got myself a 72. You needed to get 25 for English, and I got like 30 something. So I was like, yep, that's great. And then when I arrived at uni and I realized that no one even talked about my ATAR, I was like even angrier at myself for caring, because I was in and I passed it and I sit where I sit today. So yeah, but no, I wasn't disappointed because it got me in. It got me what I needed.
Why teaching? So you seem like that was pretty clear.
Yeah. That's a really good question. And it's one that I get asked often and I love answering it. And I feel like everyone becomes a teacher because of a teacher that they had. And when I go back as far in my memory, when I think about what I wanted to be, I never wanted to be anything other than a teacher. All the way back to my prep teacher, Miss Ibiano, who used to come out at recess time with her big tub of Ski Delight yogurt and, you know, her keychain. I was like, I want to be her one day. To then having that one teacher. And for me, and I feel like he's passed away now. I tried to track him down not too long ago to tell him that he was such an incredible role model and probably didn't even realize it. But as a grade 5 student getting ready to go to secondary school and whatever, he was one of those teachers that made me realize that learning doesn't have to be stale. It doesn't have to be boring, that everything you do provides you a learning opportunity. And he changed my entire perception on school. And I was like, I need to do that for kids and I need to give back. So from that moment on, I was like, I need to, just don't remember a time where I didn't want to be anything other than.
Yeah. So what was it that he did that made you feel more invested in learning? Because I think that's something that in schools and in education, we often say, you know, you want a love of learning, but like, can you help us see a moment that you think of where you really channeled that?
100%. So he used to wear phantom ties to school every day. You know, we talk about the hook and explicit teaching and the ways in which you grab the kids' attention. And for him, it was that tie. He was, you know, a comic fan, but he always used to say to us when it was time we were learning something and he would start writing on the board. And like, I so vividly remember him, Dan, like he would stop and he'd be like, you know what? Gather round, we're going to have a chat. Because you know what? Monkeys can copy from a whiteboard. I have seen studies where they've trained monkeys to copy what's written on the whiteboard, but the learning's going to happen here. And he'd get us down on the mat and no question was, you know, wasn't accepted. It was a safe space to just ask the questions, really pull things apart, say, I don't get that. What do you mean, you know? And every single one of those chats I came away from, I'm like, I got that. Yeah, that makes sense. So I feel like it was that connection. And which is probably why, you know, and I say it, I'm a human leader and I lead with my heart. And it's probably, you know, it's probably one of my greatest strengths, but it's probably something that he taught me that, you know, when you just be a human, you don't need to be a robot and you just be a human and you get the best out of everyone, not even just in the classroom. You get the best out of your marriage, your friends, your relationship, whatever it might be. And he kept learning real. And I think that's, yeah.
I'm really interested then. So given that that's so powerful in primary school, to push on what Laura was asking about, why secondary teaching then?
Yeah, because as a student myself, secondary school was hard. And it was hard for all of the reasons that it's still hard. And that is that you are this Dorcas McDorcas when you are in high school trying to work out your style and all of the things. But I found those years particularly challenging, just fitting in, finding, you know, where you belong, making sure that you don't change who you are to fit in with the crowd. Being teased for being overweight or having curly hair. It was hard. My secondary years were hard. And when I think about my secondary education and I think about the teachers that helped me through that, and there's a handful of them and they were all very helpful for different reasons, I feel as though just better connected to that age group because I didn't struggle through primary school, but secondary school was tough. It was tough. You know, I wasn't part of the cool group. There was a group of kids that were cool and everyone else wasn't, and I wasn't in that group. And the things are said and just all of the things that I wish my wiser self could go back and tell my younger self, well, have a look at where they all are now. I don't know what you were worried about, doll, but can't do that. And so I just feel like the impact that you can have, that I felt I could have had on the life of a child or a student was at that secondary level.
I don't know if I ever had a style when I was at high school. And I think back to, I try not to look at the photos now. There was a lot of
Mine was
cargo
McDorcas.
pants, which just looked terrible.
McDorcas, Dan. I was McDorcas. I really was just a bag.
It is interesting though. We
Own it now.
talk a lot about that secondary time of when you turn 13, 14, 15, of really sort of wanting to find those adult mentors and coaches and people that are role models for you, I suppose, as a teenager that's outside of the home. And I think I had a similar experience to you where I think I was looking for those people but never really found the connection that I was looking for. And so I felt the same, like I really wanted to be able to be the adult that I didn't have in the secondary setting.
Yeah.
So I completely resonate with what you're saying.
Absolutely. And even now as a principal or as a past parent, I think about the kids that sat in my office, and some of my fondest memories of teaching, it's like when I've literally leveled with a kid and been like, right, when you're angry at that teacher, you hold your swear words, you come in here, you tell me that you think they are a BIT because I'm safe and I understand that they might not have heard you. Swear at me. I can cop it. And then we're going to go out there and we're going to apologize because we have to be civil, and you're not even going to like your family sometimes, and you have to be nice to them too. You have to be respectful. And it's like then I found myself being that person. And that's probably the part of my job I miss the most. I say it all the time, the kids and that connection.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think it's interesting as well to go back to earlier. You said I cruised through those finals. I think that's an interesting word. So I'd love to. I've got a two-parter when it comes to the next question, which is, so when you say cruised, what does that actually look like? Because for you, that still might have been, I don't know, doing all the study, or it might have been just partying a whole lot, or, you know. But I'd be interested to hear what do you mean by cruised? And then the second part is that, would that show up in the school reports you got too? Would the teachers have seen you at cruising too? So what did cruising look like? And is that a comment that came through in some way in your reports?
Yeah. Okay. So partying, absolutely not. Remember, Dan, I told you I was a McDorcas, so no party.
Yeah, I'll cross that off the list.
No, I wasn't a party animal. I had friends that were party animals, but I very much was not part of that party world. Cruising looked like going to school, flying under the radar, not getting into trouble, head down, bum up, and doing enough to get things submitted on time. Notorious, even as a university student, notorious for handing things in at the last minute and starting them 45 minutes before midnight, the day before it's due, and working through the night. My dad was phenomenal at staying up late on the couch so I wouldn't get scared. I'm like, Dad, I've got this assignment, I've got to do it. And I didn't get into trouble, which I don't know why they didn't tell me off for not doing my homework. Maybe because I wasn't a naughty kid, but it looked like submitting everything on time, but literally starting at the night before. And what I learned later in life is if I did things any earlier, like at university, if I did an assignment 3 weeks before the due date, I'd only ever get a credit. If I started it on the due date, submitted it late, got the penalty for the late submission, I'd still get a high distinction because the quality of the work. Yeah, I learned that I work well under pressure. Yeah. For those of everyone following at home, do not test this theory. But for me, it was just I worked well under pressure. So cruising looked like waiting to the very, very last minute to get it done. And I got it done, and that's what cruising looked like. What was the second question? Got excited.
No, and then I guess so thinking, because that's your perspective of, you were cruising. What were the report cards? If we could see like the common theme that came through on the reports, is that a comment that would come through?
Melissa is a studious student, contributes positively to the class discussion, is very organised, flew under the radar, did what I had to do to just fly under the radar. So the only negative thing my report probably would have ever said is I talk a bit too much because I like chatting, love a chat. But no, it was just, they were just my reports where we could have 10 Melissas in this class. It'd be lovely to have 10 Melissas in this class.
So did you ever feel like you were really known then by your teachers at school?
At the time, probably hadn't thought about it. Now as a student, ex-student, but now an educator, no, not really. Because they just thought Val was just going home really. They thought I was studious. They didn't know I wasn't sleeping the night. My year 11 English exam, not my English exam, the oral component. So the last part of the, it was the November time of year. I literally did not go to sleep. I started writing it the night before. I'd been working on it in class. The teacher had kind of been cross-checking it, but I was kind of fluffing. And then I'm like, nah, this isn't going to work. I don't feel this isn't flowing. I turned the whole thing on its head. I didn't go to sleep. I literally walked out of the study in my house. I used to live 4 doors down from my school, walked into the oral sack, completed that component, and then went to bed. Didn't even sleep the night before. No. I reckon if you ask my teachers that now, they'd probably laugh. They'd be like, what? Yeah.
It's funny. So you love the adrenaline that you need when like the pressure's there in order to perform.
Yeah.
No,
which is probably why I thrived in the working environment that I did and the career that I've had, because when the pressure's not on, I'm a bit bored, so I get a bit distracted, like it's got to be going, got to be moving.
Yeah, and it's interesting too already, like, so Loz did a classic Laura thing just then by like pulling on a thread around like being seen and the fact that you really care about people. Like you described yourself before about being human first. You wanted to make sure that you can best help the kids that come in and sit in your office so that you can connect with them. Now the work that you're doing as well, supporting schools, businesses, different people as well, to get really clear about what it is that they want and how they can, bring out the best in themselves. It sounds like that's sort of something that maybe you didn't necessarily get from the teachers at your school, but now it's still set you up for the path that you're going on. Did you see yourself, like, are there early signs about leadership? Because you've moved through and went and became this really highly accomplished, recognized teacher that then got pushed forward into these leadership roles. Were there some early signs now that you think back where you're like, oh yeah, maybe I did have some leadership qualities back then?
Yeah, 100%. Absolutely. Let's go all the way back to group work. Oh my God. I always had to be the leader because everyone just sat there and did nothing. And I'm like, come on, guys, we've got to get this done. So all the way back, I know kids roll their eyes when, we put them into groups and we go, someone's going to be the scribe and someone's going to be the timekeeper. But very early on, I was like, God, if I don't get things moving, people don't. Probably, like I was part of the SRC. I was vice school captain in year 12, head of the fundraising committee. We did a study tour to Italy and I ran the entire fundraising committee. So if you're talking just about school, it just naturally was one of the things, if someone needed something, Mel will do it. I'll never forget the school captain at the time. He was he was actually my best friend at the time. I wrote every speech he had to say, I wrote it because he didn't want to write and he was the captain. If I ever see him, I'll take a look with him one day. But I used to write his speeches. So maybe I did and I did.
Where does the motivation come for getting things done? It's this idea of like, we need to get it done. I'm going to move it along. I don't want to stay stagnant. Why are you motivated by that?
That's a really good question. And the answer's probably a little deeper than a 70-minute podcast. But I think it just comes from, so I've done lots of psychology work around my EQ and all of that stuff, as I've gone on my leadership journey. And I have it's like perfectionism, like things have to be done. So the motivation comes from the satisfaction I get when it's done and it feels like I get that dopamine hit and I'm like, this is perfect. Love that. That's great. What keeps my head afloat though is I have realized, and I don't know when or how I realized this, but I realized I don't have to do everything myself. So I can still get that dopamine hit of perfect, everything's done. Even if I'm not the one that did it, but I know that I've guided the team to get there. I'm like, yes, I don't need the win, my ego, healthy sense of ego. I don't need the win myself. If we are winning and that's great.
Yeah.
So think it's pretty interesting. So you said that you cruised in the final years of school. And as we hear the cruising, so you're not only doing all the assignments, you're handing everything in as it's needed to be done, but then you're writing speeches for the school captain, your school vice captain, you're part of SRC, you're part of the different groups. I'm going to hazard a guess that you're probably involved in some sort of extracurricular activities on top of that too, some sort of sport, performing arts. Yeah.
All the things. I was a performing arts student. So I used to go to performing art. Yeah. I did acting after school. Yeah.
So that, and I think that goes back to that question around, like, when you say cruising, it was cruising in one aspect, I guess, right? Like you knew what you needed to do for that, but you also had all these other things happening for you while you were cruising. That actually sounds like a really high performing student.
Yes.
Yeah, but isn't it interesting though that I was like, oh, I was the worst student in the whole wide world. I said those words before I started
You
that.
did.
So it's interesting how your perception of yourself, like to me, I think I'm just not great. But really, when you look back and you say it out loud, it's like, geez, that she was actually doing a fair bit, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And I think there's
Yeah.
also something that you've touched on that's really helpful, because a big thing we hear from previous guests is they talk a lot about communication skills, certain qualities. People would sometimes call them soft skills or, human skills. One that you just slightly hinted at was your ability to delegate. Now, we normally sort of talk about that later, but I think it's nice to raise it now, because you said, I've realized that I can get other people to do the thing so that we can all work together, so that we can, like, it's that sense of ticking it off, but it's happening through others. Do you mind explaining, like, how do you effectively delegate and get people on board to do the things? Because that in itself is such a tricky skill.
Yeah.
Your leadership experience, like, what is it, the way that you delegate, and how do you delegate well?
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, you can't even think about delegating if people don't understand the cause and the why. So when everyone's working towards the same thing and they understand the narrative and they understand the vision, and this is why in any organization, whether it be a school, whether it be corporate enterprise, whether it be just your small little business that you've got 3 or 4 people working for, your vision has to be clear. And what you're working towards has to be clear. And the people that are on your team have to believe in the cause and believe in the vision. So, I have always been very, very strategic in my leadership roles, whether that be with when I was just a coordinator looking for an assistant coordinator, all the way to a principal, a principal of a brand new school, handpicking people that I knew had the skill set, the morals, the values, the beliefs that aligned with the core purpose of what it was that we were doing. So to effectively then delegate, it's like when everyone understands the vision and everyone believes in the mission and they're like, we are doing this, you can ask them to do anything and they'll do it. The second thing is you have to trust your people. So I can't stand hearing people tell me that when I do mentoring and coaching and they're like, oh, we've had to fill out this accountability document that tells us we've done X, Y, Z, Y, Z, Y, Z. But by the time I've done that, I've lost 3 hours of my day. And what I needed to do, which was just develop this document, I didn't get to do it because I had to, I'm like, oh, the micromanaging, like give people the chance to do their job and also realize that they are going to make mistakes. And that's okay. That's actually part of it. You want them to make mistakes because the only way that we learn, the only way that we grow, the only way that we move forward is by making mistakes. But when you genuinely give someone ownership of something and it's theirs to work on and you are not micromanaging, I guarantee you're going to get better than what you expected from that person. So I have never, ever, given someone a task and then watched over them and managed every single step. Like, I'm like, I employed you to do this. Show me what you've got. And then whatever it is has to be shared, I will never get up there. You'll hear me say, and if, any of my staff would ever listen to this, I would always say, I can't even take credit for this, but this amazing work has happened and this is what we have done. And really, when you sit further back, I probably can take credit for it, right? Because I might have been the brains behind that and I might have whatever, but it's not my credit to take. And like I said, when people feel valued and they feel trusted and they feel a part of something and they feel like they can contribute, oh my God, I'm still shocked that people get it wrong. Like I listen to people's journeys and what not only principals but leaders are doing in major corporate associations. And I'm like, guys, it's not that hard. How do we keep getting it so wrong? I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it definitely does. I think to check that I was listening properly. So be really clear on what it is that you're doing and therefore the people are clear about, you're getting the right people as well. So they're clear and they're buying into it. So you're clear on why we're doing the thing. You then articulate it really well about what we need to do. You then actually realize that they might do it differently to you, but give them the space to go do it. And then you provide
100%.
Provide some sort of support. So you're not looking over their shoulder, but they know that you've got them. And then give them the credit as it gets to that point. But you make sure you share and you acknowledge and you say, yes, it's been completed, but you recognize that.
Yep. And pleases and thank yous. Ask them
And
nicely.
pleases and thank you.
And thank them for their work. Really, it's insane. I'll write a book about it one day, leadership do's and don'ts. And I reckon the first 48 chapters of 50 chapters will be the don'ts because it's just workplace wellbeing is really important to me, and looking after your staff. And I'm going to say that with a trigger warning because there is a story around suicide coming. I watched what workplace stress and feeling like it's all too hard can do to a human. I watched a very competent, capable, driven, hardworking, very young leader literally just diminishes the person that he was, to the point where his only way out of the corner he felt his professional world had backed him into was to take his own life. And it is just at the forefront of my mind all the time whenever I speak. And it's not even in the workplace anymore. Whenever I speak to someone, you just don't know what they are battling, and you don't know what their life looks like beyond the conversation you're having with them. I genuinely believe people don't wake up in the morning and decide to come to work to be mean or rude to you, or to be rude to the students. Or I don't believe students wake up in the morning and decide to come to school. People don't, it's not human nature to just be nasty. It's not innate in us. So, really protecting your staff and the people around you from a wellbeing point of view starts with simple things like making sure that when they're doing their job, you're not giving them anxiety because you're cross-checking every single thing that they're doing. And that's been a real driving force behind everything that we do and why we do what we do. Yesterday, we actually caught up with a founding director of a charity. One of my staff read or heard on Instagram, she posted a video to say that her association or her charity was going to have to close because they're just not financially viable. The work that they do is in mental health of youth, and they support predominantly parents and families. And the reason why this woman started this charity was because she was the parent of a child who attempted suicide, and it became her core being. And my staff member heard her put up this Instagram reel that, the charity was going to have to close because they don't have enough funding. And she called me and she's like, Mel, we need to help this woman. We need to do something. We need to do, what can we do? And I said to her, listen, I don't actually know if we can solve her problems. I don't know what problems and challenges she's facing. I don't know the financial positioning. I don't know if there's any finances to invest and support. I'm like, but tee up a meeting and let's meet with her. And if the only thing we get out of that meeting is checking in on this woman to make sure she's okay, because who's checking in on her? Well, she's checking in on everyone else. And she's a founding director of this charity. Who's asked her if she's okay? If that's the only thing we do tomorrow in this meeting, that'll be great. So we met with her yesterday, and as we got talking, she told us a story and whatever, I said, listen, we'll pledge 5 hours. I'll give you one of my staff, 5 hours. You can have her to see if she can generate any sort of income, because I believe in the work she's doing. And at the end of that, she says to me, this has not only made my day, this has probably made my year, because good people do exist. And it was 45 minutes of our time. And then 5 hours beyond that, and like the difference that you can make. And it just shocks me that in a world where you can be anything, so many people choose not to be kind, because it costs nothing. It blows my mind. And I feel like I went on a tangent.
No, Mel, it's great. I think there's a reason why the book Wonder was a bestseller, because at its heart it just reminded that when in doubt, you can choose to be kind, right? Like that's the thing. And I think listening to your story, it keeps coming back to you obviously really invested in people, in community. I mean, the fact that you said I was a cruisy student who then was actually doing all this sort of stuff, you choose to get in, you're choosing to get the most amount of everything that you can do. And then at the heart of it is there's people, and you've realized that if you can show up a bit kinder and you can choose to care, well, through all your experience that makes a big difference. It's actually a really great way to help us segue to think of, when you think of, and I've got written down here, a non-linear path shaped by trust, challenge, and learning. Instead of us reading back to people, can you walk us through, because you've already started doing it, walk us through your journey from leaving school, being really involved. You could see you wanted to be a teacher. You then completed your degree. You've finished that degree, moved into actually working in a school. Walk us through your journey from leaving school to where you are today.
All right. It's non-conventional. If I had a whiteboard, it would be like, okay, so I graduated as a 17-year-old because I was young. So I started my first year of university, 17, just turning 18, just got my license. First year of my teaching degree, I drove to uni for the first 3 weeks and didn't get out of the car. I was so scared. I just couldn't do it. And then the day I got out of the car, I found my lecture theatre, but the lecture had already started. I couldn't even walk in, which I kind of, when I do my reflections and I journal, I'm like, I think about that version of Mel. And I just wish I could give her a hug. Like, just walk in, sit down. No one cares that you're late. So I started my teaching degree. I did a double degree arts and secondary education. In my first year as a student, my secondary school principal phoned my dad and asked for my number. My dad rang me and he knew what was going on, but he didn't tell me that he did. And he said to me, your principal's just called. I hope you haven't done anything, like what's caught you a year after you've left school. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? So I rang him and he was like, oh, I've got some students doing Italian by distance ed. And because I'd scored so high in my VCE, he was like, do you want to come back and tutor them? They just need a tutor. So I was studying my degree and I was tutoring these kids that were studying Italian via distance ed. And I also worked in a pathology lab, the graveyard 3:30 till 11 p.m. shift, because I had to go to uni and work during the day. And on the weekends, I worked at a deli and a bakery that were in the same shopping complex.
You're just cruising.
It's
cruising. It's
ridiculous. Yeah. I wasn't cruising once I became an adult because I had bills to pay, right? And so I had 3 jobs and I was studying. And so then I ended up back in my high school, in the staff room. Like, teachers are psychos. Like, the things they talk about, they actually party. Like, what's going on? But that kind of thrusted me into what the workings of a school look like. And I was so privileged to be able to see that side of a school whilst studying, because it just made the learning so much more meaningful. And if I could speak to a dean in education anywhere that would hear me, like, get your teacher students into schools. Don't leave them in uni for 4 years, because there is no textbook that's going to tell them what to do when a kid says you can go and yourself and throw a chair across the room. There is no book that's going to prepare them for that. So I was really privileged because I was able to really feel the true context of what I was learning. That developed into an education support role in the school. So at that moment in time, some funding came to schools for teachers to have EAs. So like these administrative roles where we could do like laminating and cutting and all of the things that teachers didn't have to do to ease the teacher burden. So I did that for a bit. And then in my 3rd year of my degree, my principal calls me in and he said, listen, we've got a situation. I've got an Italian teacher that's not coming back. I've advertised the job 3 times. I'm going to contact VIT. I'm going to see if we can get you permission to teach. And I was like, what does that even mean? And he's like, well, they're going to get you to fill out this application. And if they're happy with it, you're going to be able to teach. Like, you're going to be the teacher. And I was like, I'm not even fully qualified. He's like, yeah, that's the whole point of permission to teach. Which is so funny now, because permission to teach is like a thing, but I'm a product of permission to teach, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, fine. So I was studying and I got my permission to teach, and I ended up having to move universities because Deakin wouldn't let me do my teaching rounds at school, but La Trobe University would. So I had to swap over my degree, moved to do my post grad in secondary ed at Deakin, at La Trobe, because I'd finished my arts degree. So then we made it a post grad and I did my recognition of my RPL came with me. And in my first year of teaching as a not a real teacher, a permission to teach teacher, I was given a year 12 Italian class.
Wow.
We got audited by VCAR that year.
Oh my gosh.
And we were using the distance education curriculum, so technically breaking every copyright rule there is going round. So I had to develop the entire year 12 curriculum. And I'm talking coursework, SACs, all of the things.
Before
because I had submission.
Yeah, that's right.
Earning less than the janitor. But I went into my principal and I said to him, you're going to kill me. What are you doing? And, he's to this very day, he's like my work dad. He's like my mentor. He looked at me and he said, Melissa, put his hands on the table. He's like, you're either going to sink or you're going to swim. And if anyone asks me to put money on it, I'm betting you're going to start swimming. You'll be right. And I was like, oh my God. God. So I walked out of there and I survived my first year of teaching as a not real teacher, a teacher of VCE as well. Ended up picking up in that year. I picked up a role as the domain leader because no one else wanted to be the domain leader. So my principal called me back in.
Just
She's like,
for
you're also
anyone
going to be
listening, sorry, Mel, just for anyone listening, what is a domain leader? Just in case they're not from education.
Yep. So in schools, every subject area is identified as a domain and someone has to run that subject area. So there'll be a domain leader for English, for maths, for science, for humanities, for languages, for technology. And I was the languages domain leader. And that was challenging. That was challenging for a number of reasons.
How many
the group
were you managing, just out of interest?
It was only 4.
Okay.
But it was challenging because I was obviously incredibly young at the time. Some of those people were my teachers. One of them was such a positive influence in my teaching journey, but it was very hard to shift the dynamics of leading the space with people that were like, well, why are you telling us what to do? I used to come home, I cried a lot of tears from the Italian department. It was a baptism of fire. And when I met my now husband, I said to him, Italian teachers are all psycho. Run for your life. I'm going to be one of them. Run. Wiser me now can appreciate why that version of themselves would have felt the way that they did. It wasn't personal.
Yeah.
And there was a lot going on behind the scenes that they weren't aware of because the principal can't always share what's going on. So it's left to interpretation for the people. So I kind of became a bit of collateral damage to what they thought was happening versus what actually was happening. Small team, but I did that. And 6 months into my first year, the Year 7 assistant coordinator announced he was retiring, and the Year 7 coordinator comes running at me and she's like, you should be my assistant. And I was like, absolutely not. She's like, why? I'm like, no. I just got to learn. I'm not a teacher. I don't know if anyone's told you. I'm not fully qualified yet. I just need to finish my degree and I just need to be a good teacher. Like I need to be a good teacher before I'm a good anything else. And she said to me, give me 6 months. 6 months, I bet you being an assistant coordinator will make you a better teacher. Just trust the process. And if at any time you don't want to do it, you can leave. I promise. I'm not going to hold you here. You don't, just try. So then I became the Year 7 and 8 assistant coordinator and the domain leader and the Year 12 Italian teacher. And I was still working after hours doing nails and spray tanning because that's something else I didn't tell you about. I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I thought maybe I could do that too. So I was running like a salon after hours. Manic.
I think you are the definition of cruising.
Yes.
Yeah, I know. I probably listen. My ADHD diagnosis came back as I don't have ADHD.
Oh.
And I actually said to the lady, I was like, well, if I did, I wouldn't let you medicate me because you'll take away my superpowers.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then I became the assistant coordinator and I'm finishing off my degree. So fast forward a couple of years to the end of the following year, which then I'd finished everything. The assistant principal broke her ankle halfway through the year. And one day I got to work and the coordinator, who was an incredible mentor, like so much of what I know is thanks to her. Like I was just a sponge. She was a good operator. She was like, I've just got to go to the office because I've got to help because we don't have the AP. So I was left managing the sub-school myself. And that year, the principal had advertised all of these leading teacher positions. And I went into his office and I said, listen, would it be cheeky of me if I applied to be a leading teacher? And he looked at me and he was like, well, I don't even know what the rules are because remember, I'm still not the real deal, yeah? And he's like, I'm going to need to call HR and ask them if you can apply. So he did, and they told him that if the year that I was starting my tenure as a leading teacher I was going to be fully qualified, then I could be a leading teacher. But when I was applying for the job, I wasn't even a qualified teacher yet. I was a permission to teach teacher.
Wow.
So I said to him, give it to me straight. Do you think it would be cheeky of me if I applied? And he said, listen, I don't know what you look like on paper and I don't know how you interview and I'm not even part of the process. But I would say to anyone that asks me, you don't know if you don't try. I think you should try. So I did. So I put in an application. I got shortlisted, got myself an interview, and sure enough, I got the gig. So I graduated the end of that year, and as a graduate, first year, fully qualified teacher, my first day was as a leading teacher. But by this stage, I had worked in a school for 3.5 years, doing every job. And that wasn't because the school, the school was, unfortunately for them, was in a situation where the staffing profile was quite experienced and it was an aging profile. And, I remember the experienced teachers at the top of the ladder saying, why would I do that when it's $30 extra in my pay? It's like, that's a large pizza. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to teach my classes and go home. So there was so much opportunity for young leaders in the space to step up, because the experienced ones, and I don't blame them, for an extra $30 more, why would you, right? So my first day as a teacher, I became a leading teacher and I did that. And I was the sub-school of year 7, sub-school leader of 7 and 8, still domain leader. I became, in charge of transition, promotions, marketing for the school, did all of that, fell in love, got married, had babies, went on leave. And my principal, who had retired, got a phone call. He was at the front of the Colosseum. This is a true story. I'd organised a study tour to Italy because, remember, I'm still the domain leader at this point, but I was heavily, heavily pregnant and he had to go and take my place. And after this study tour, he was retiring and he was at the front of the Colosseum replacing me because I just had a baby. And the department called him and said, there's a school on the other side, of town, principal out on stress leave. We just need someone to man the fort. Would you be interested? So he went and worked there. And while I was on leave, whenever he needed something, staff member called in, like anything, he would call me because he knew I was around. And then he called me one day and he said to me, listen, I've got assistant principal, they're leaving. I'm going to advertise a job. I would really like you to consider applying for it. And I said to him, absolutely not. I'm a mum. I can't be an assistant principal. I don't want to be one. I'm really sorry. And I said no. So he went ahead and went through the recruitment process and appointed someone. And then a few months later, that gentleman needed to go on long service leave. The principal put it out to his school staff. No one put their hand up. And he rang me and he was like, can you do me a solid? Just give me 6 weeks. He's like, I just need someone who for 6 weeks, I know I can work with them. I know they know what to do. I've advertised it internally. No one's applied. I'm going to put this job up. Can you please apply for it? So I gave him 6 weeks as the AP. And he was like, and it was easy. It was cruisy. The AP that I took over was phenomenal, good operator, went in. So I spent, 6 weeks as an assistant principal. And then I went back to mum life. Some 6 months later, that assistant principal calls me and he says, I don't know if you've heard. I'm like, oh God, here we go. He's like, the department have overturned an expulsion that the principal at the time had called. And he's like, so on Friday afternoon, he's quit. He's literally quit. We don't have a principal. I'm like, well, what are you ringing me for? He's like, listen here, the department have told me on Monday morning I'm the principal and you're the only other person I know that can help me. I need you to come and help me. And I was like, I don't even have pants that fit me. Like at this point in time, this is my first thought. So I was like, oh my God, okay, all right. I've got 2 young kids at home. Okay, how long? He's like, just a couple of weeks. I'm like, all right. So I get there, hit the ground running. That's a baptism of fire. The tears I cried working that job, the trials and tribulations, but every single one of them made me who I am today. So I'll thank the universe for them. But 4 or 5 weeks in, the department rock up and they're like, listen, this school's had X amount of principals in X amount of time. If you're happy there and you're happy there, we're going to leave you both here until we advertise for a substantive principal, which then means the acting prin can go back to his AP job and I can go back to maternity leave. Fine, no worries. So I did that. And
jump in, Mel, sorry. I just love that you go, so I did that, like just as a way to round off just all of the changes, besides needing to go find pants that fit you, and also you've got kids, you're managing all of this. Is it okay if I quickly interrupt to think, and I'm going to steal this question from Laura, which I've heard her use before. What do you think all those people saw in you that made them go, hey, I need you as my assistant coordinator. Hey, I need you as the assistant principal. Hey, I need you to jump in as our Italian teacher. Hey, I need you to be the domain leader. My instant thought would be, she's a go-getter. She's a doer. Someone once told me, if you need something done, ask the busiest person they'll get it done. But when I think about it on a human level, it's probably just that I feel like I'm just incredibly approachable
And I'm a pretty positive human being. There's very, very few times where I'll go down a negative rabbit hole. And I think people are just drawn to that, really. Yeah, like they knew if they'd asked me to do it, I'd do it. And they knew I probably wouldn't complain because I just don't have energy to waste time complaining. Like I just don't. It's too many other things to do. I'm running the world, Dan.
Well, talk us through then. So you've laid such a brilliant pathway to see. So even before you graduated, you've been identified, you've been jumping on opportunities, teaching, moving through, leading teacher, domain leader. You get to have a try as being an assistant principal while also being a new mum. Talk to us about being a founding principal, because not many people, you're in a really small group of people and a founding principal for all the listeners is someone that actually starts a brand new school. Walk us through that and what you discovered through being a founding principal.
To just like fast track, it's like I went from the AP gig to stepping out of leadership altogether burned me in ways that I can't tell you. The toxic nature of the school was a lot. So I kind of hung up the leadership boots and I completely stepped away from it. And then when I got sucked back into the leadership vortex, as I call it, it just kind of like it's this magnet that you just try really hard to hold on, and I just feel like it keeps pulling me back. I found myself working in a really complex school, complex needs, and that was where I worked with the principal who unfortunately lost his battle with his mental health. And then when I realised that, because remember I'd said I didn't want to be a principal, I've never wanted to be a principal, after what happened to him, and I actually quite enjoyed the job and I found myself doing it. And I'd come home every day and I'd say to my husband, Jesus, this actually isn't that bad. Like I can do this job, because I didn't think I could. When the opportunity came to open up a brand new school, I was like, I need to take the best of the best and remember all of the things that I was like, alarm bells, don't do that, and put them all together to create something great. So all of the experiences, the good and the bad, it's not just the good ones, because I feel like I learned more from the bad experiences, to build a community and a school that encompassed the best of the best practice. I feel like I'm a pretty humble human and I don't often toot my horn, but I'm going to say beep beep because I feel like we got there. And I feel like if you spoke to any one of the founding staff of my school, that I was so privileged to be on their team, not the other way around. I was so privileged to be on their team. They would tell you that vision actually did come to life. And it was making sure people felt like they were a part of something that was bigger than just them, and making sure that they could positively contribute. Yeah.
Starting a school, for anyone that's listening just now, and sorry, Loz, I keep jumping in.
No, you're all right.
For anyone that's listening, I guess, because I haven't gone through, like when you say the word starting a school, 3 small words, they're actually like incredibly difficult and hard. I guess you said you learned from what not to do as well. Maybe that's a helpful point. What did you learn, what not to do?
And I think if we can just double back to, because, I just think about the students and the parents that are going to be listening to this. It's like, don't ever fear failure. That's where the magic lies. Getting it wrong. Oh my God, get it wrong a million times, because every time you rectify what you got wrong, you come back better than ever. So it's that. And I feel like this is half the battle in people's success stories and people's ego taking over them in their roles, whether they're a leader or they're not a leader. People are so afraid of making a mistake or being perceived to not know what they're doing, that they kind of smoke and mirrors and hide it till it all falls over. And, when I applied for my substantive prin position at the founding school, my seal at the time, so for those of you who don't know, your seal as a principal, you have a seal, a school education improvement leader. They're kind of the principal's boss. She was my referee. And when they said to her, look, Melissa's, young in her journey and, as being in leadership, like at that point in time, I'd been in the leadership world for about 8 or 9 years, despite the fact that I was in my early 30s at that point, really. But I remember I started teaching when I wasn't a teacher, right? So, but one thing she said to them when they said, how do you think she's going to cope with the things that she doesn't know? And the one thing that she said, which resonated with me, and I remind myself of this all the time, is she said, Melissa doesn't pretend like she doesn't know. And she's really okay to say she doesn't know. And if I don't know something, I am so okay with saying, I'm really not sure. That's a great question. Leave it with me, but you can rest assured I'll make it my mission to find the answer. And that's when I think about my journey and go, God, how did I get to where I got to? It's because I didn't pretend like I knew. If I didn't know, I just owned it. There are so many people that are so fearful of being judged. And I feel like it's, people that work in education are notorious for it because everyone just thinks because you're a teacher, you know everything. No, you don't. I can't spell supercalif. I can't do it. And I'm not going to pretend like I can. And I'm an English teacher. Not going to pretend like I can. But people get so afraid of just saying that they don't know that they end up shooting themselves in the foot and making their lives a lot harder than they need to be. So fear of failure, fail forward. My husband always tells me, fail forward. I'm like, yeah, don't fall back, go forward. That's, it's true.
And what other things did you make sure you were taking into this new school or not taking into this new school when you started?
Yeah. Practice what you preach. Had to come with me. Don't do anything you wouldn't ask anybody to do. I could plunge a toilet and unblock a blocked toilet in less than 4 minutes. You didn't even need to call the plumber because in a startup school, I was the IT guy. I was I'd worked in places where you didn't see the principal. I'd worked in places where you didn't even know that they really existed or worked in places where they were invisible. I'd also worked in places where they were. Let's go all the way back to that first print, the one who's still my mentor. He was everywhere. On a parent-teacher interview day, he'd come to work in a tracksuit and blow the leaves and paint the roof and do this. So when the parents got there, he'd put his suit on and everything looked great. I was forward-facing. My door was always open, visible, there, helpful, helping. If anyone had a problem, let's find a solution. And then the don'ts, don't micromanage those people. Don't make them feel less than. Don't put a shadow of a doubt in their mind that they can't do their job because then they will start to doubt that they can do their job. And then you have a problem.
The thing too is, so listening to everything that you've shared, you've had so much success and you've jumped at so many things. I think there's also a bit of a dark side with success, right? Like especially when you're really a go-getter, a dynamo. So the thing that I think is really powerful in your story is, and it's not to just jump in and let's just dig into all your burnout. It's not that. It's to say, given that you've gone through that, what is it that you've learned that you think are core messages for people? Because you're so successful, but it came at a price. So if you feel comfortable, share whatever you want to share around the burnout aspect. Yeah. But I think the important part is, what is it that now what message would you give to people?
First and foremost, there is nothing more important than you. And when you die, at whatever time the universe decides it's your time, no one's going to put on your tombstone, best principal ever, best checkout chick at Woolies, best EA. They're not going to do that. They won't do that. So you have to look after yourself is the most important. And you have to be able to listen to your body and to know your limits. And I'm really fortunate because I feel like I didn't burn out. I feel like the universe was like slapping me and it was sending me these little messages so I didn't burn out and it redirected me. And, I say this all the time. People go to me, do you miss being a principal? I miss it every single day, every day. The first day of term for me, it's like I feel like I'm getting emotional saying it. The first day of every school term, it rattles my cage because I have serious FOMO because I want to be on my way to school because I loved my job. However, it doesn't matter how. I realized very quickly, and I guess it's about listening to your body and understanding your limitations. It didn't matter how organized I was. It didn't matter how good my work-life balance was. And when I say good my work-life balance was, I mean getting up in the morning, off to Pilates, meditating, eating right, all of the things, textbook. You could tick those boxes and be like, she was doing all the things. It didn't matter how organized, how resilient, how hardworking I was. The reality is the demands of the job, not realistic. Not realistic. And I wish I could sit with the people who have a little bit more power than I do to go, there's so many different ways you could do this for principals to keep them in their jobs, but that's a bigger conversation. So I feel as though it's understanding your limitations. And for me, I knew I was tired, but I wasn't listening. And my journey was as simple as this. My journey out of my journey was I opened up the school. That was a half a year journey on my own before I had staff. The school opened. That year was insane. Didn't actually have a holiday. The summer holiday was, 6th of Jan. I was back at school. I had every single person I knew that could help me lifting things. My kids might as well have called at home. Literally didn't have a break. But the adrenaline, right? You're just living on this high. You open up a school, it's off its head. It's amazing. The kids, phenomenal. Staff, fabulous. Parents, even better. Like, there's not one complaint. So I said to myself, I'll get to the start of the next year. We'll kick off our second year in operation because, you know, the first term in a startup school of every year until you get to that year 12 is quite chaotic. I'm like, I'll take term 2 off. So I took term 2 off. Long service leave, and, you know, people are like, where are you going? What are you doing? I'm like, I'm just going to cook a roast on a Wednesday night, guys. Like, I'm taking long service leave so I can do school drop off in my gym gear and just chat with the mums that chat. I want to be one of those ladies. So I had no grand plans for long service leave, and I took a term off and just lived my best life. Did the mum thing. It was so good. Went back to work 3 weeks in. I'm in the staff room. I'm talking to someone. And I'm looking at this staff member and I just can't see her face. I could just see from her head up. And I was like, and I'd laugh about it. And I was laughing about it at the time, but I really shouldn't have been. I turned to my business manager, who was like my work mum. And I'm like, listen here, love. If I hit the deck, you tell the paramedics I lost vision. Like, I can't see from here up. I can't see. It's all black. And anyways, I don't know why I drove home that day, but I did. Like, I don't know. We waited half an hour. I sat in the sick bay on the most comfy recliner couches we'd ever purchased in our lives. Did the things. But I went, it was enough for me to book a doctor's appointment, went straight to the doctor. The doctor said to me, I need you to go have an MRI. Went and had an MRI. And she's like, it's probably a migraine. You know, you physiologically, you look well, fine. So I went and had my MRI. The next morning, I was at school, 8 o'clock, consultative committee meeting, because that's just the life of a prin. You're there from ridiculous o'clock to ridiculous o'clock. And the meeting finished, everyone walked out. It was me and my business manager. The phone rang, and it was my doctor's clinic. And it was the receptionist, and she's like, Mel, we've just got your report from your MRI. The doctor wants to see you. And I was like, oh my God. I'm like, okay. I'm like, I booked an appointment on Friday after school because I'll get my results then. She's like, no, she needs you to come in today. And I was like, oh, what time? And I feel like this is the part that kind of rattles me. She's like, doesn't matter what time, just come in. And I was like, oh my God. Yeah. And I remember hanging up the phone and I looked at my business manager, who has overcome her own battle with cancer. And I was like, oh my God, that's it. I'm going to die. And she's like, no, you're all right. So I rang my husband. I'm like, you need to meet me at home. We've got to go to this appointment. Like, every worst case scenario you can think of is running through my head. And when I got to the front of the doctor's clinic, and I cried the whole way there, because I said to my husband, I don't care about dying, but I've got babies. My babies, they need me. It wasn't even about me. It was about my kids. And I took a breath before I walked into that doctor's clinic, and I looked up and I said to the universe, I know I need to slow down. I know. If you just promise me, just give me a chance, I'll show you I can slow. Just don't make this be bad. Don't make this be bad. Because in my head, I was like, stage 4 brain tumor, catch you later. I'll write my eulogy. I would have written it. You know what? I probably would write my eulogy for my husband. God love him. Because that's how I roll. And I went in and she said to me, listen, she's like, you don't have a tube. She must have seen it on my face. Like, my face must have said, I'm going to die. She's like, you're not dying. She's like, but you've got these lesions on your brain. There's 6 of them. We don't know what they are. We don't know what they look like they could be the early onset of multiple sclerosis. Yeah. Either way, I need you to see the neurologist immediately. And all of the testing, lo and behold, I still have 6 lesions on my brain. It became a bit of a running joke at my school. Once I went back, we'd say things and I'd say to people, it's just because I've got the lesions, you know. The other day, one of my staff texted me and she's like, hey, so I've got the lesions and this is what's happened. Like, it actually became a story. But it just turns out that the neurologist, I've had every test, every MRI, they started off 3 months, 6 months, all of the things. They never progressed into multiple sclerosis. I still have this demyelination. I still have this white matter on my brain. And the neurologist said to me, we don't like to blame things on stress. But my mum was a principal and I know how stressed you are. And I think if you just sorted out your work-life balance and just jig things will be okay. So I took a year's leave without pay. That was last year. And I was meant to take the whole year off. And I got to the end of term 1. By this stage, all of my follow-ups, I've been having the follow-up appointments, no change. The lesions had stabilised. No new ones. They hadn't got bigger. They were anticipating that they would find some on my spine. They didn't. And my 10-year-old daughter, my eldest, we were driving to dancing one day and she said to me, Mummy, I know you love your job. We love having you at home so, so much. And I was like, yeah. And she's like, please don't go back to school. Please don't go back. And you know what? In that moment, I was like, I can't do this. What am I doing? And I got into bed that night and I said to my husband, told him about the conversation. I'm like, so I'm resigning tomorrow. He's like, what? He's like, you're so emotional. You do everything. He's like, you've got leave till the end of the year. And I just said to him, but my mind's made up. And because I am a human leader and I really cared about my staff and that school, I'm like, they deserve to know what's going on. Let them find a substantive principal. Let those people have clarity in their leadership, because when you're waiting for someone to come, and I used to get messages from people all the time, 89 days till you come back. I couldn't string them along to the end of the year to then drop that bombshell on them. And I'm like, I'm making a call and I'm making a call, and I made the call. And to date, it's the hardest decision I've ever had to make. And like I said, I miss it every day. But when I get to, like, I'm going to come straight off this podcast call and go and pick up my kids, and I'm going to go to dancing, be a dance mum, which is a whole nother story. We could do a whole podcast on that. Like, I'm winning. Like, yeah. I'm winning.
Mel, I'm sort of a dance dad. I'm a dad of 3 girls, so we've got a gymnast in there, so I sort of relate to a previous dancer. So I do know the excitement and the fun of dance.
Yeah.
But I think listening to you talk just now, so one of the things I wrote down was, so success can't come at the cost of well-being.
Yeah.
And the thing listening to you now, so you've chosen like a forced slowness. You made this deal with the universe. And then your kid actually said to you that really direct thing, right? Like that's pretty confronting, and it sort of also crystallizes. But so what does a slower life look like? And do you want to talk a little bit about what the work that you're doing then to support people in education still?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the principles that we support and we work with, so remember, I never wanted any principal, anyone in leadership to feel like there is no way out and that they can't do the things and feel so unsupported. So we do lots of different things, but I guess one of my principles, and this is just the best way to describe, I'm her fairy godmother. Nobody knows I exist. Nobody knows she employs me. And because I speak principal language, because I understand what's going on, when she needs something, she's like, hey, Mel, can you get that done for me? Yeah, I can, sure. And I do that. Tonight, I'm going to go from here to dancing, and my kids are going to dance for 3 hours. They dance in North Melbourne. I live in the northern suburbs. It's a 35, 40-minute hike for me to get to dancing, but this is what we do for our kids. And while my kids are dancing, I'll get that stuff done for her. But the whole way to dancing, I get 45 minutes where we can talk about their day, tell me about their friends, and then I'll go there and I'll help somebody else, but then get back in the car, and for 45 minutes, my mind is just going to be on my kids, because the work that we do is not our problems. They're other people's problems. So we solve other people's problems, but I'm no longer carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And it's fulfilling, because it's so nice to know you can contribute and you're making a difference and you're helping someone. So it fills our cup. And I say our cup because I've got a team now. It's not just me. It fills our cup in so many ways. But yeah, a day in the life of me looks like going to school drop-off. Today I was in Collins Street. I was in the city meeting with a potential client. Then I came home. I had sushi by my pool. And then I hung out with my dogs for 5 minutes. And then I got on this call. And then I'm going to go to dancing. And this is a day in the life of me. And it's like, I'm still making a difference. I'm still connected to education. We're still supporting people's well-being. But the sad thing is, for so many people, once they get to that position at the top, they see stepping down from that as a failure. And that's why so many people get stuck there. And it makes me sad for them, because just because I'm not a principal anymore doesn't mean I couldn't do it, couldn't hack it. I'm young. I'm 37 years old. I have 2 young kids. And I was okay with that. But there are so many people that just go, but this is my entire entity. This is who I am. And I just wish I could hug each and every one of them and tell them, yeah, but you don't, like, you could be anything you want to be. I would just get stuck in the 9-to-5 grind and think that this is our forever, but it doesn't have to be. I mean, like we were talking earlier, Dan, like our skills as teachers and educators, so transferable. It blows my mind. The things we could do.
It's a pretty powerful thing, I think. So what would be the message that you would say to people that are thinking about pushing back? Because there's a model that we have of what a career looks like and what you do, and you jump up rungs, regardless of whatever industry you're in. So what's the message? Because you've reinvented, you've made the shift. What is the message that you would give them to help them if they're thinking about the change?
First thing is, it's never too late to pivot. It really isn't. Like, you can be 35, 45, 55. Like, it's never too late, number one. Number two, you've got to back yourself. You sit where you sit because of the work that you've done. No one put you where you are. No one put me where I am. There was no free tickets. I say to people, there was nothing glamorous about the work I did, plunging toilets, all the things, you've earned your stripes. So back yourself. But just make sure that whatever you're doing, it's not at the cost of your people. Because when I delivered my resignation announcement to my staff, and oh my God, if we could go back and watch that, I'm not a crier, and I cried the whole time. But one thing I said to them was, I can resign from this job and they can advertise my position and they can replace me like that. But my kids can't advertise for a new mum. You just can't.
I had a mentor teacher, and I said this to Dan, that's why he just clicked at me. I had a mentor teacher.
I was looking at you.
I had a mentor teacher who said to me, they replaced John F. Kennedy in X amount of hours. They didn't even know that was coming. You're replaceable here. And she would always say that, and not in a nasty way, but just to gain some perspective when you're exhausted and tired and unwell and you're dragging yourself into work because you think these kids couldn't possibly without me. Yeah, they can actually. But what does mean something are those people at home, are the people that you're part of their actual world, not just someone who shows up at a classroom every day. It's funny. It's a really important reminder. And as my mentor teacher when I was a grad.
Yeah,
that's me from the start.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I just feel like until it happens to you, until your cage is shook a little bit, I just don't think you'll get it. And then just when you think the universe is done throwing you curveballs. So I resigned at the end of term 1. At the end of term 2, my daughter, who told me not to go back to teaching, was diagnosed with a tumour on her skull. So my mother-in-law passed away on Monday. And on Wednesday afternoon, I was admitted to the oncology ward at the Royal Children's Hospital with my daughter. And I'll never forget sitting in that room, looking at her and just thinking all the sorts of things you think when you have a kid that's in the situation that she was in. But one thing that I just kept saying was, oh my God, universe, thank you so much. Thank you. I just kept saying thank you, because if I was a principal in that room, I don't know how I would have been able to effectively support her and be present for her without losing my mind, because the phone doesn't stop ringing. As a principal, the phone doesn't stop. Things go pear-shaped. You can say I'm off the grid, but the phone still rings. And I was just like, imagine. And look, thankfully now she's on the other side of that and she's going to be okay. But what if she wasn't? And I just kept thinking, oh my God, where have I been for the last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years? Where have I been? Not here. And you can't buy that time back, right?
Yeah.
So I guess, don't wait for the universe to rattle your cage if you can help it.
Mel, I think it's not a full circle, but there's a nice sort of theme that's emerging. So when you think back to your time at school, you were under the radar, but you weren't too sure if you felt seen. So that was a thing that fired you up for this career in education, which was all about helping people be seen and valued. And then what you've just said now is now your kids are actually feeling seen and valued because you've made the choice. So it's all about coming back to people being seen and valued by you.
100%. And even yesterday, I put a reel up because, when you're the boss, you don't get to do all the fun things. Like, I'm in the office, I'm unscrewing a box, we're putting the sign up in the office because we've got an office now. And when I did my kind of reflection thing on my socials, I was like talking about my journey a little bit. And I was like, thank goodness I've been able to do this, because for so long, my kids had to share me with my students because I don't care about anything halfway. So whether you're my student or my child, I cared, and I cared a lot. My staff, I cared. My parent community, I cared. But they had to share me for so long. And I thank them often for doing that, for allowing me to hold space for other people. But yeah, you're right, Dan. It has gone full circle. And now it's them I see, it's them I hear, getting into bed and reading a story and not worrying that I've got 4 teachers away tomorrow and I'm going to have to take a food tech class myself. It's just it's not a problem. It's a non-event.
I would love to give you an opportunity, though, to share your motto as a Prin, which I think is really important. As we said, we've got lots of parents listening, and I think it's a really beautiful one. If you could share it with the audience, please.
Yeah, I can. My motto as a principal, and this became, I guess, the vision for our school, but I would say this to anyone who's got a child going through the educational journey: every story will be different, but every story will be great. And parents have to remember that. They need to not be comparing their kids to what the cousins, the aunties, the sisters, the uncles, the friends, every child is their own little human, and their story is going to be their story, and every story will be great for its own reasons. For the kid that thought they flew under the radar, but they actually didn't. For the kid who said they couldn't do it, but they might not have got the best score at school, but next minute they're playing national cricket, basket, whatever it might be. Every story will be different, and so they should. But every story is great. You just need to find and look for the parts of the story that are great.
Mel, it's such a pleasure hearing. We use the word dynamo at the start, and you're a genuine dynamo. It's your passion and your energy for this is infectious in all the right ways, Mel. I'm very mindful, just really briefly for the ends, what haven't we asked that we should have?
What haven't you asked? God, I feel like we've talked a lot today.
We go deep. We go deep.
I don't know if there's anything you haven't asked. But I feel like, you know what, if we could touch on something, and we touched on this a little bit earlier on today when we first caught up, and this is really just in line, you know, with the work that you're doing in supporting parents and students, you know, in those final years of their education journey. It's like the manual that we don't have. How can you best support a parent to support their kids? And it's just remembering things that I wish somebody had told me, that it's okay to make mistakes. Fail forward. Failing's where the magic happens. The unnecessary pressure that they're going to put on themselves, you don't need to put pressure on them. They're already putting pressure on themselves, even if it might look like they're not. So what haven't you asked? Maybe what are the top tips that a parent with a student in secondary school going through their final years, what can they do? Be present. Ask them how they are. Encourage them to rest. Encourage them to go out and see their friends. Encourage them to have balance. Don't stop them from seeing their friends. Don't tell them they can't do it. Encourage them to have the balance. Or in anything that you do in life, it's knowing when to push, when to pull. It's no different. Check in on them. Ask them if they're okay. What do they need from you? And if they say nothing, great. Just hold space for them then and enjoy that journey with them, because these are some of the most incredible years of their lives, right? And I feel like I stand where I stand today because my parents, they never made me doubt myself. They're like, you can do anything you put your mind to, anything you put your mind to. And every message was always like that. So I feel like
it's already a great story, to steal from your motto, but I'm excited to see what emerges further for your great story ahead.
Thanks.
So thank you so much for joining us on More Than a Score. Laura, if anyone else out there, or Mel, if you know anyone out there that has a really lovely story to share, they can reach out to us at morethanascorepod@gmail.com. And then, Laura, where are we on the Insta handles?
Just at More Than a Score Pod on Insta.
Mel, thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Now, normally I wish we need to work out some way. We normally in person do a crisp high five, but I reckon I need to do some thinking about how we can do this digitally, because otherwise we'll just look like thumbs up. But that's okay. We'll work that out. Mel, thanks so much.
Thank you.
No, all good. Thanks for having me, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.